Want to see my massive coffee? Needed, necessary, delicious. So, you're going through a spiritual awakening. Suddenly, the truth doesn't quite feel like the truth anymore. The veil is being lifted. The world that which you thought you knew is shifting colors, different hues, a different light. But what is actually happening? Are we losing our minds? Are we losing our minds? Yes, but in the best way. Hi, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Cambria. I am a psychic medium, and I am a witch. I am also a human on earth, constantly evolving and shifting into different levels of consciousness, which is what we are going to talk about today in my Spiritual Foundations Part 2 of the series. I'm very excited. Thank you for being here. Welcome. So, you're going through a spiritual awakening. First off, if you weren't going through a spiritual awakening, you probably wouldn't have clicked on this video. So hi, you're in the right place. Welcome. Going through a spiritual awakening of any kind, no matter how many times you have been through the process, can feel disorienting, isolating, and even euphoric all at the same time. It's very confusing. It's a roller coaster of a journey. It is definitely not a straight line. Okay, so yeah, like at all. It's really, it goes up and down, okay? But we will get into it. You are in the right place, and you are also not alone. So that should make you feel a little bit better. Shifting through different evolutions and levels of consciousness is not linear. It is more like a spiral, which we have talked about in previous videos. And it fits so perfectly here. It is one of my favorite physical reminders of our world that in nature we see this spiral, and in our evolution through consciousness and spirituality, we are constantly going through a spiral. And I also say I am spiraling like twice a week at least. So it's a very universal symbol. Okay. Awakening spiritually shoots us out and loops us back around until we fully embody and learn our lesson. Everyone's journey is so different and so unique that some might even completely skip certain phases or certain stages of their spiritual awakening. Some have to start on earth with very little information, while others are born into receiving more information in environments that nurture that spirituality and that information and that growth and that spiritual awakening. However, each of our journeys is exactly what our soul needs. You are not behind. You are not too advanced. You are right where you need to be for what your soul needs in this lifetime. So how can we tell that we are going through a spiritual awakening? While there are so many different stages and phases, I hope this makes it a little bit more clear and resonates a little bit deeper with you. In whatever stage you are in your spiritual awakening, or if this is not your first time around the block. You know what I mean? So let's get right into it. Stage 1 is what we call the unconscious or asleep or dormant stage. The dormant stage of unconsciousness is initially the starting point. While this phase seems like it has a very negative connotation that I think has just been programmed and placed on it over the years, this phase is neither good nor bad. It simply just is. And it's almost actually like being physically asleep, where you are kind of just blissfully unaware. Just snoozing away. And that is okay. It's kind of like you don't really know what you're missing if your eyes are closed. In this unconscious asleep phase is when we are deeply rooted and attached to our ego, which is also the hamster wheel of thoughts and emotions that fluctuates a person's personality, decisions, and actions, and ultimately their life. Their sense of identity is deeply tied to the ego in this phase. That narrative that we tell ourselves of our life story is constantly replaying over and over again to this identity and even trauma. There is also no separation between the individual and what they are experiencing. This often leaves the individual to be in a constant victim state or a victim mentality, constantly thinking and attaching themselves to what they are experiencing as happening to them, not for them. This leaves them to react to life instead of consciously shaping and creating their life. This can lead to a feeling of a lack and a need of control, which causes resistance, leading to negativity and feelings of hopelessness. The only way out of this phase is through, and that starts with the awareness of the attachment to the ego and how it shapes our decisions, our actions, and ultimately our life. This is the starting point of a deeper connection with self and with spirit, and also higher levels of consciousness throughout our human experience. Stage 2 is what we call the ego death. This awareness from our dormant asleep phase can cause what we call an ego death. First, I do want to preface with saying that the ego is neither good nor bad. It simply just is. And I think it is also one of those things in spirituality that gets more of a negative connotation. And while we say ego death, I want to really emphasize a healthier sense of ego and a sense of self. I think there has to be a balance between ego and the spirit, because the ego has been in place for protection and for survival. And while we can be grateful for that, we can also deconstruct some of the limiting beliefs that the ego places upon us. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay. To be constantly identifying and vibrating within the frequency of our ego can be hindering to our evolution of consciousness as a human. The death of the ego changes and shifts our perception around our identity and our sense of self, and factors like race, gender, age, and these limiting programming beliefs. The death of the ego dissolves these stories and narratives that we have attached our identity to throughout our life, to make us simply just realize that those stories and our experiences don't fully make up who we truly are. Our true selves live beyond the ego and beyond our attachment to this identity. It's kind of like when you wake up one day and you realize that everything that we have been told just doesn't hold as much truth anymore. You start to question political standings and religious beliefs and all of the attachment to these structures and building your identity around these structures. This dissolution often leaves us feeling real weird. It's like when you first find out the government lies to you, it feels weird. It can often make us feel empty and disoriented. So if you are in this phase, you are not alone. And trust me, it does get better. I promise. Yet this transformation does something very powerful. It separates ourselves from the subjective self who attaches to thoughts, feelings, and emotions, to our observer self, detached from thoughts, emotions, and triggers, to witness these thoughts and emotions without judgment. Another way to describe this would be the subjective self would simply say, I am so sad today, versus the objective self would stop and say, I'm feeling a lot of sadness today. I wonder why I'm feeling this sadness today. Oh, it must be because of that. I can respect that. I can honor that. I can observe that. I can see that. I'm going to let that emotion run through me. This shift shows the awakening person that the ego is not the true self, that the subjective state and self is not the true self. The thoughts and protective barrier that the ego builds up is not the true self. Also, what we have been conditioned to believe is not true. The story or the narrative that we have attached ourselves to about our life and who we are is not the core of our existence. The awareness of this shifting to allow ourselves to detach from the ego self and step into wanting to learn more about the truth, about who we are at our core, at our center. Who is our true self? Who is our awakened self? Stage 3, the exploration stage. As the spirit detaches from the ego self, it craves knowledge and understanding and truth as it enters the exploration stage. During this phase, I could not get my hands on enough books, podcasts, videos, teachers. The thirst of knowledge was seriously unquenchable. Also, when you're in this phase, thrift books, my friends. Cheap books, you'll get them used. I often got a lot of books with little hidden handwritten notes and messages in them. It was very magical. Thriftbooks.com. Hi, sponsor me. Just saying. This exploration phase leads you into rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And these rabbit holes that I willingly flung myself into deconstructed so many belief systems that I held to be true for so long. Systems and beliefs around politics, religion, relationships, spirituality, life, and even death fueled this desire to unravel the mysteries of the universe, to connect with the universe, to answer all these timeless questions of what our purpose is and why are we truly here. This stage also leads the spirit to dive into different spirituality practices or habits like meditation, channeling, prayer, manifestation, or even opening up our psychic abilities. I always tell my clients and my evolving consciousness beings that once you crack the door open a little, spirit and the universe will swing that door right open. It's kind of like the floodgates are open. You are just open to learning all of the information, absorbing it all. It's a very magical, beautiful stage, honestly. Reading and listening to videos and podcasts leads to a pathway of enlightenment and higher consciousness, connecting the searching spirit with people and ideas that resonate on such a deep level of remembrance. It's almost like the spirit is just simply remembering. Stage 4, the rise of the authentic self. As the perception shifts from the ego self and through the exploration and the connecting with spirit, emerges the rise of the true authentic self. I like to describe this phase as, you know who you were when you were a little awkward middle schooler and you just didn't care because you thought you were super cool. And even though your fashion sense was yikes, you thought it was great and you just liked what you liked and you were who you were and it was blissful and beautiful and awesome. And then when you went to high school, you kind of tried to fit in a little bit more and tried to be cool and to kind of blend into the background. And then once you graduate high school, you kind of go back to that middle schooler that you were, and you pick up all the same interests and hobbies and you just let your little freak flag fly and you're just happy even if you don't feel cool. This phase is kind of like that. Rise of the authentic self is kind of like who you were in middle school. You simply just remember who you are without the conditioning and the programming and the experiences that made you dim yourself and dim your light. In this phase, your spirit feels lighter and brighter, happier and more enlightened, and most importantly, more present. Your spirit is detaching from the ruminating and hamster wheel of thoughts and emotions and remembering who it really is in the present moment. Remembering that nothing can be good or bad in this very present moment right now, without the thoughts of what has happened in the past and without the thoughts of what is happening in the future. Just simply right in this very present moment, we can be happy, blissful, beautiful, and joyous. Being with yourself, being with your energy, the realization that nothing external has the power to manipulate or cause a disrupt in my energy and my emotions without my consent. In this phase, it gets harder and harder to engage in activities that don't feel in alignment with this new and more enlightened and lighter and brighter self. Even relationships begin to shift and change, which can feel very jarring and disorienting. And if you're in this phase, I do have a lot of compassion for you, because I wish someone told me that when I was in this phase. The facade that you have put up to show to the world simply begins to break down. And simply because you don't care that the ego could be damaged or threatened, there is a return and a remembering with this rise of the authentic self that honestly feels addicting. The awareness begins to shift to what is in alignment with the true self and not the ego anymore. The spirit is no longer willing to compromise relationships, jobs, and pursuits that don't align with the true self. And this could lead to the fiery crash and burn of some. So, hopefully not overnight. Hopefully our internal true self kind of triggers and starts to feel things, and it slowly breaks down over time. I went through my first spiritual awakening, and this phase was so jarring, and my life did completely shift and change overnight. Not to freak you out. It's a good thing, I think. No, it is. It's a good thing. It just doesn't feel like it in a time. And as scary and as jarring as that was, I knew I had to let go of this old attachment to my ego self to welcome in what is truly in alignment with my authentic self. With the shedding of what doesn't resonate with the new awakened spirit comes the influx of new energy that is in total and perfect alignment with your awakening authentic self. Out with the old programs, in with the new. And sparkly. Along with the sparkly and beautiful aspects of this phase does come a shadow aspect. The awakening spirit can look at old traumas and wounds from a new perspective, allowing the opportunity to radically shift and heal. Old wounds and old triggers come up for a reason, to be acknowledged, a release with this newfound perspective. Stage 5, alignment. The integration of a spiritual awakening leads to a life of alignment, a life of connection with your soul and your energy in the outside world, reaches beyond the connection to oneself and extends to all beings and aspects of existence. The connectedness of the collective and humanity, it reaches to a deeper connection to the soul and the mind and the body. Passionate understanding of limitations that we have had before without judgment or shame, as well as self-forgiveness and the release of imperfections and faults. This impacts relationships as the ego self is quieted previous conditions of being stuck in this victim mentality, and it shifts to the observer, often realizing that relationships are simply a mirror. What triggers is what is meant to be healed, that everyone is on their own unique journey of consciousness, and that we might not all be in the same stage at the same time, thus realizing that everyone is doing the best that they can with the level of consciousness that they are working with. This alignment will push the spirit into new opportunities of occupation and pursuits and relationships that are aligned with this new frequency. And it's honestly like magic. The synchronicities multiply and they feel like they are just a part of your normal life now. The alignment phase also shows the spirit that everything is perfect and everything is divine. That the ego mind places the labels of good or bad on experiences that are all on purpose. There is really no good or bad. Showing the spirit that everything is simply an opportunity to learn and to evolve and to grow. That the darker aspects of life and our experience on earth aren't meant to scare us. Triggers are simply just opportunities for healing. That contrast is meant to be felt and experienced so we can know what we want and what we don't want. How could we know what happiness feels like if we don't know what sadness feels like? In alignment comes with the understanding that we are direct extensions of God and God's source energy and spirit, that there is no separation. And if there is no separation, that means we are the creators of our life. It's all divine and purposeful and perfect. And if we are the creators of our worlds and our own universe, then there is no victim complex. That protectiveness of the ego is no longer needed. I hope this sparks a deep remembrance with you, and I hope it resonates. I also hope it reminds you that through whatever stage that you are in, that you are loved, you are beautiful, you will come out on the other side. And if you're in the fiery crash and burn phase, I promise it gets better. I really do. I'm right there with you. You are divine, you are magic, and I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.